Welcome to the Associated Church Press podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Snyder. This is a space where professionals in Christian media share real stories, successes, challenges, and lessons learned so we can connect, collaborate, and grow together in today's changing media landscape. Welcome, everyone. I am delighted to have Adrianna Lewis, who is the editorial assistant for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada, but also an incoming board member for Associated Church Press. So, Adrianna, I'm so excited you're here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, well, and so you're coming into a new role on the ACP board, and I'm interested to hear a little bit more about why you want to get involved there. But let's start with your day job, and doing the publication work for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Tell me a little bit about sort of how that's structured and what publications fall in that purview.
Sure. So I work at the national headquarters for the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada, and I'm currently in the Office of Communication, and we have our publication called the Canadian Adventist Messenger magazine. And so I've been working with this magazine for almost 6 years now, and
Mm.
we tell the story of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada. So it's a monthly magazine, 48 pages, and we mail it to all of our members across Canada. We print over 20,000 copies every month, and our membership is about 80,000 members across Canada. So we just use this magazine to keep connected with our members by sharing what's happening, sharing stories, and providing a source of encouragement to everyone.
Well, and that is kind of a huge task because Canada's a big country.
Yes.
Um, and granted, Seventh-day Adventist, if there's 80,000 members in Canada, that's a pretty small group. But how do you sort of editorially and philosophically, how do you cover such a large space on a monthly basis? And there's probably a lot of diversity within that membership.
Yes, we definitely try to have a lot of diversity in our magazines. We have several columns, and then every month we try to have we have our cover story, and we have a few feature articles, and we also like to showcase news of our churches in action and what's happening. So we try to like just fit everything as much as we can into this 48 pages, and sometimes we're like running out of space, and we have to postpone things to the next issue because we're always welcoming people to send us their story. We want to hear stories of people's conversion into our church. We want to hear people's testimonies. We want to know how they're doing, and so we're always looking to tell the story of our church members.
So now what do you feel are the most powerful stories that you're getting? Because if you're dealing with like self-reported, they could be really anything. So for you, what's been most compelling to hear about?
So we've had some pretty unique stories. I think of the time that we showcased the story of a Rwandan genocide survivor. And that
Mm.
was very powerful to hear how she had managed to survive and escape death during the genocide that happened in the early 90s. And more recently, we showcased a story of a couple of students that were able to travel to Abu Dhabi for a competition, and they won a US dollar 150,000 uh, sustainability prize for their project at their high school out in Alberta. So that was in our
That's so
Messenger
cool.
April 2026 issue cover story. So that was pretty exciting. So we're always just trying to find out like, what's the story? What's happening?
Mhm. And so now, it feels also like that's kind of a global, outlook in some ways. Some of your most compelling
Yes.
stories are kind of beyond your borders. So can you,
Yes.
like, put the Canadian, Adventist Church in context for me? Like, in
Sure.
terms of how you're interacting with other churches in other countries and sort of how it all works?
Sure. So the Seventh-day Adventist Church is global. It started in the U.S. and it's all over the world now. So we have like different divisions throughout across the globe. The Seventh Day Adventist Church in Canada, we call it SDACC for short. We're in our North American division, along with the U.S. and other places. So basically, we are responsible. Like within the division, we have I think it's around 9 unions, and so each union has their own publication. And so the SDACC is like the Canadian Union, and we're an entire country. And so our magazine is specifically for all Canadians, and generally everybody that writes for the Messenger or whose story is in the Messenger is we try to have everybody connected to Canada in some way, whether they were born in Canada or currently live in Canada, but we always try to have that Canadian connection.
Hmm. Oh, and I think that's so important. And you've worked there for about 6 years. So tell me about your journey. How did you wind up doing what you're doing?
Sure. So, I should say that I always wanted to work in communication, specifically for the church. So when I was around 12 years old, I sort of felt like this calling on my life to get involved with religious broadcast, television broadcasting, actually. That
That
was
is a really specific call. I love that.
And, I actually got to do that last year because we had a show on Hope Channel Canada, which is our, new network that we launched a couple years ago with the SDCC, and we had a show called Messenger based on the magazine, and I
Oh,
was the
fun.
yeah. So I got to actually see the dream that I had, had so many years ago actually realized hosting this show and being a part of Christian media. So I love to write. I love to edit. That's really where my passion is. And so for me, this is my dream job. And I was contacted by Stan Jensen, who's a former editor of the Canadian Adventist Messenger back in
Mhm.
2020 during COVID. He's retired now, but he gave me the opportunity to work for the church, and so for that I'm very grateful because um, I couldn't get my foot into the door right after I graduated with my master's in communication. There's just so much like competition and limited spots. So
Mhm.
I actually had to wait like around 10 years doing other jobs outside of communication, working in different fields that I wasn't trained in, just to survive. And then 10 years after I got my master's in communication and media studies from Andrews University, which is our Adventist flagship university, I then got the job of my dreams. So I'm thankful.
What a wonderful story. So now I'm always curious when you had that dream at 12, how did it match up to the reality at, in your 20s or 30s? Was it what you expected? Was the dream true or did you have a different conception of what religious broadcasting would be like?
So I always felt since I was like a teenager that media can be such a powerful tool for good and for spreading the gospel message and that Jesus saves. And I actually first started studying broadcast journalism in high school.
Mm.
I went to school. I graduated from Hoover High School in Alabama. I'm American by birth, and so and now I'm a Canadian citizen. As of about 4 years ago, I became a Canadian citizen.
Oh,
Uh,
congratulations.
Thank you. I have dual citizenship. But, yeah, I actually was able to get on CNN when I was 18 because I had created, reported, and edited a 3.5 minute news story that aired on a show called, CNN Student News, and this was back in 2002. And so, my story was chosen out of a lot of students that had submitted stories to be considered, uh, and I was very thankful. At the time, I was talking about the progress in race relations and how I
Mhm.
talked about the civil rights movement that had started in the 1960s and how Dr. Martin Luther King's dream of equality is becoming a reality in the US. That was the angle of my story, and I
Mhm.
was chosen to be on CNN for that show. It aired, and I was actually invited to, after I finished high school, to come back to CNN for a potential
Wonderful.
career, but I declined. I didn't follow up with CNN because I had this dream. I'm supposed to work for the church. And
That's
of course,
so cool.
thank you. Like, now, not everyone in my family could understand why I felt so
Well,
strongly
yes.
that. My grandmother, I think, wished I had gone to CNN, thought well, CNN's a great place to work. Why not? But I really felt that no, I don't want to do just regular journalism. I really believe in like faith-based journalism, and I really feel a calling for Christian media. So, it literally has taken, about 30 years from when I first had that realization. But I can see God's leading in my life, and I realize that you just never know where and how the Lord will lead, and all we have to do is just follow him, and he will guide us each and every step of the way.
Well, and I really admire your faith in that path because when when you have your family members and really just life experience saying like, okay, this path is difficult. This is, it's not happening as quickly or as easily as you want, but
Yeah.
having the fortitude and the faith and the strength to follow your calling, I think is such an important piece. I wanted to ask you what you think, like what you think is so compelling about religious broadcasting, like the because you've had experience in other types and other venues, but what do you think is pushing that call? Like what do you see as differentiating religious communications?
So, as a Seventh Day Adventist, and I'm actually a fourth generation Seventh Day Adventist,
Well, I was
I
curious if you were birthright Seventh Day Adventist. Okay, good to know.
yes, I really value my heritage, and we believe in the second coming of Christ. So, the Adventists, I think it's connected to the word Advent, like Jesus' second return to earth. So we believe that Jesus will return after he, went to heaven, after his resurrection. He's going to come back to take us home to heaven and spend eternity with him one day. This is what we believe, like so many other Christians and other, denominations within the Christian faith. And so, um, as an Adventist Christian, I believe in the importance of letting people know that Jesus loves you, Jesus wants to save you, Jesus is coming back, and we have such great news, and it's really all about spreading hope because there's so much darkness in this world and chaos and confusion, and the battle between good and evil is real. And so, like, I think that if we can use media as a way, as a tool to help bring salvation to people and help bring hope to people and transform their lives, and their spirituality, then I think that, media can just be such a blessing to so many people, and people that we don't even see on the other side of the camera, or there's all different types of media, but we never know the impact that it can have across the globe.
Absolutely. Well, and I think also when you look at the Messenger, you've talked about the TV show that they had, you have the magazine. I feel like you have a fairly robust social media game as well. So, like
Thank
in the way that you're reaching Canadian Adventists, um, I know you print 20,000 copies, but you have about 80,000 members. Like how do you package all those stories, and reach all of your constituency? It's because it's not just the magazine, it's all the other pieces as well.
Yeah. So in the beginning, years ago, the messenger used to own the mailing list. So, like in our office, this was before my time, we would try to keep track of all the many church members across Canada. But
That's a
with
big
our
task.
yeah, it just started to become too much, and thanks to our previous editor, Stan Jensen, he decided let's hand over the responsibility of keeping track of the members to our conferences, because we have
Mhm.
around 7 conferences in our union for Canada, and so basically each conference owns their mailing list, and so they are responsible. Like it's managed by the churches. So each church has like a church clerk, and then they will keep track of who the members are, and then they have the ability to subscribe the members to the messenger. And the messenger is like every church member across Canada is entitled to a complimentary subscription to our magazine.
Mhm.
So only people who are not Adventist church members or people outside of Canada, we invite to pay for a yearly subscription, which is $20 Canadian or US, depending on where you are. So
That is really economical.
oh! Yeah, so we really rely on our churches and our conferences to keep track of, like, where members are living, what their addresses are, who's being baptized into our church, so that this way we can really get these 20,000 copies into the right homes. And so we say we mail our magazine to 20,000 households, because a lot
Mhm.
of our households can have like 3, 4, 5 members. So we try to reach all 80,000, but we probably could continue to improve in that regard, because, people are always changing, and, there's always new members being added.
Oh, absolutely. And so with like social media and your website always being available, do you see that as sort of an almost an evangelical piece to draw people in, or are you seeing more are you kind of replicating content and share and just trying to reach your membership in a different way?
So we do see social media as a powerful tool. We have someone on our team who actually that's what they do part-time, is just manage our social media, and they create posts from the magazine, and they also create other messages of hope and encouragement, because a lot of times people may not want to receive the hard copy, like they would rather read the messenger online. We do have some people who write into us and say, you don't have to mail us the copy. We'll save the paper. We'll just view it online. So we do have the messenger available on our website, at adventistmessenger.ca. And so we have probably around 1,000 people every month who regularly read our online, which is great, because we want to be where people are, and not everyone is necessarily reading the magazine in their hands anymore.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, life is changing, and I think there's still something about a physical magazine that people spend time with, and as a
Yes.
monthly, you get to go a little bit more long form, and I get the sense that a lot of your articles are like things that people will chew on and think about. They're not just, sort of little news bits. Um, so I wanted to ask you a little bit more about what types of writing. I know you accept a lot of self-reported articles, but when you're kind of managing an editorial theme, what does that look like for you, and what are you trying to put in the magazine?
Yes. So I assist our editor, and my role is dealing with the content. So my job is to gather the content for the magazine and to work with the writers and advertisers. And so whenever a submission comes in, I'm usually the person who kind of reviews it to see, like, does this meet the criteria for our magazine? Is this what we're looking for? If so, does this need to be improved or enhanced before we publish it? So we are always looking for things that really are attractive, like stories that are engaging and attractive and relevant. Um,
Mhm.
and we're not only just telling the story of the Seventh day Adventist Church in Canada, but we're also seeking to align with the mission of our church. So we often want to inspire people with a call to action through the stories that we publish, where in which they can read something and feel like, they want to do something meaningful, or they want to, their faith is increased, or they just feel drawn to Christ in some way through what we publish. So we try to be intentional about what we publish. And in more recently this year, under the leadership of our editor, Pastor Sean Ellis, we had a redesign of our entire magazine with.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yes. So our first issue, we ended up doing a combined issue with our January, February issue. Usually it's monthly, but we made an exception for this one. And we had a complete redesign. And over the last few months, we've added a few new columns. So now we're trying to add some columns that kind of talk a little bit more about our theology as Seventh-day Adventists, so that our readers can kind of understand what we believe as Seventh-day Adventists in terms of our doctrine.
Mhm.
So that we're doing just a little bit more than just telling stories, but we're actually like giving people information as well, so that they can know what we believe.
So then kind of linking it back to the core values and doctrine of the
Yes,
church and sort
yes.
of because, the bailiwick of telling stories of hope and salvation, and, I feel like you do need to tie it back in to make that really, really meaningful. So how has that been playing out with this new redesign? I imagine it's physically a redesign, but, sort of in how you're soliciting, articles or commissioning articles. What elements of the doctrine are you trying to play up? Are you doing thematic issues or just kind of putting it all in there?
So recently I noticed we're trying to promote like the theme of unity within our church, because
Mhm.
this probably I'm sure happens outside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church as well. Within the religious realm, there can tend to be division. There can tend to
Not
be.
just in the religious realm for sure.
That's true. There can tend to be people like taking sides. And so, we're all about bringing unity within our church rather than causing division. So we try to avoid publishing content that may be considered very controversial. We try to
Mhm.
avoid content that we know, certain church members may feel very strongly about, and others may feel, have opposing views. We really want to promote the idea of God's love for us, love for our neighbor, and just, having real authentic Christianity. And it's all, rooted and grounded in Christ's love, God's love.
Mhm. And so how do you just curious, like there are so many elements of divisiveness in the world, and there are a lot of, very difficult issues and topics. How do you kind of contend with that on an editorial basis and not sound too Pollyanna-ish within the magazine? You ever struggle with that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Um, so so I have the privilege and opportunity to co-write the column Heart to Heart with our
Mm,
president, Pastor Paul Llewellyn. He's the president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada. And he's really big on unity and God's love, and I find that his views on Christianity are quite radical and refreshing, because he doesn't, measure in the minors, so to speak. He doesn't want to get
mm.
caught up in like the petty issues, but just talk about like what really matters, what can really encourage our readers and, uplift people. So he's actually my Bible teacher from when I was like, I think in grade 8.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
Wayback Machine for sure.
yeah, yeah. So, I'm privileged to be able to call him my mentor, and so I'm very thankful for the opportunity to co-write with him, for our Heart to Heart column, and I've actually learned so much just by co-writing this column with him because he really only wants to focus on what is positive and uplifting, but in a genuine and sincere authentic way, in a real way that can really help people who might be feeling discouraged or even disgusted with Christianity or our church. He's all about focusing on, the light of God's love and, walking in the light, not in darkness. So, it's really great when you take that angle of walking in the sunshine of God's love in a really sincere way and not getting off track into things that can cause division or darkness.
So what does that look like in some of your columns?
So we have a variety of columns. We talk about anything from we have a lawyer who does a column about freedom of religion. And
Mhm.
so questions come in about like anything legal ish, like anything that's related to legal issues and that could be impacting our church. We have some devotional themed columns, such as our president's perspective, where we have a different conference president or leader in our church across Canada contributing to this column on a monthly basis. And we have like our prayer life column, which talks about the importance of prayer and what prayer can do for you. We showcase different ministries in some of our columns, whether it's women's ministries or children's ministries. And we also have columns specifically for young people. Like we have our Growing Up Gen Z, who is written by someone who is a Gen Z, and her name is Abigail. She does a great job of talking about like what it's like to be a Christian from for her generation. We have our Teen Talk, it's column. It's called No Cap Straight Talk with Pastor Sean and his wife Leanne. And so they address any issues that teenagers may have about our church and our beliefs. So we try to like reach all different demographics in our
You
church,
really
all
do.
different ages. And we're very mindful of the fact that many of our readers are probably 50 plus in age.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we don't want to forget about our younger generation, and even children, because they're becoming the leaders of today. So we want to be able to connect with everyone as much as we can.
Well, and so you had the redesign earlier this year, and in terms of thinking about how you're kind of meeting the moment and recognizing that your constituency or your population, your audience is changing,
Yes.
um, do you see more things on the horizon in terms of how you are adapting to meet those changing needs of new generations?
Yeah, we recently launched a column called Diary of a Missionary, where
Oh.
yeah, we're every month now. Pastor David Bakunzi, he's a missionary to Nunavut from our Manitoba Saskatchewan conference, and he's actually like telling his story of what it's like to be a missionary. So
Mm.
we're trying to really make Christianity real to people where they can see how it impacts your day-to-day life. Whether you're a missionary or just someone in a different walk of life, you can be connected to God. And so we one of our major columns is showcases the work of ADRA Canada, which is like our humanitarian arm of our church. ADRA Canada is there whenever like there's natural disasters, and they provide relief, and
Mhm.
their whole mission is to be the hands and feet of Jesus. So we just try to showcase everything, but to show that um, you know things in a meaningful way that can transform people's lives.
Well, it sounds like, telling those stories and going kind of grassroots, that's so
Yeah.
compelling, really to any age, but certainly to younger generations where, you know, maybe sometimes religion is perceived as a little esoteric or, theological debates as opposed to how
Right.
you're really making change on the ground.
Yes, exactly, because, Jesus was all about reaching people where they are.
Mhm.
So and, he didn't like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, he didn't like how they were, right? So, I think sometimes when you're in a church, there could be the temptation to become very legalistic and all about, like, the
Mhm.
rules and regulations, but it shouldn't be that way. It should be about really, loving people and connecting with people. So,
So how do you I and that's such a refreshing and simple take, that I think in some ways, it's so straightforward. Do you ever feel like pressure or call to, like, kinda make it more elaborate than that very simple God's love, making sure that you're making change in the world, and that you'll all be together again? I feel like those are
mhm.
very straightforward pieces. Do you ever feel the urge to be like, "Well, let's dress that up," or "Let's talk about different things?"
Um, Not really. As one of the contributors and writers for the Messenger, I really try to write in a very simple way that, like,
Mhm.
anybody can understand what we're trying to say, you know? Like, we don't wanna, like, go over people's heads or get caught up in, like, these theological debates or talk about things that really make no difference to someone's life. Like, we really want to just we want to touch people's hearts and minds, and we want them to be drawn into having a better relationship with God, and we want to showcase Christianity as something appealing and attractive. Like, you know, we want so many times there's things in the media that are, showcasing things that make things of the world look attractive or alluring or provide a temptation, but we're trying to do the opposite. We're trying to make Christianity something that you really want, instead of like the opposite.
No, it makes perfect sense. And so, help me understand: is the church growing in Canada, or are you kind of stable? And how does that compare to other Adventist churches in other areas in other countries?
So we are growing in Canada, which is great. Our
Partly due to the communications work, I feel sure.
and the work of our pastors and evangelists, and also even with Hope Channel Canada, which is a part of communication with our church. And so basically, we may not be growing as quickly as the Adventist faith may be in some other countries outside of Canada, such as like on the continent of Africa, for example. I
Mm,
hear that there's been a lot of growth. And in some places in the world, I hear of like, hundreds of baptisms or thousands of baptisms like in a day. And
wow.
that may not be happening in Canada yet, but we're still hopeful that we can do that. And one of the things our church is really pushing for is the continued work and sustainability of Hope Channel Canada, which is our television network, and it's across different platforms. It's not just like cable TV, but it's on YouTube. It's in social media. It's on Eastlink and Coast Cable, I think, and we're trying to like improve. And increase the exposure of Hope Channel Canada and the different programs that are there that are trying to draw secular people into our church. So the Messenger magazine is focused on connecting with the members, but the work of Hope Channel Canada is the focus is to connect with the non-Adventist, the person who may be Christian, might be interested in Adventism in the future,
Mhm.
or they may be just secular or another world religion. Maybe they're Hindu, maybe they're Buddhist, but we are using media and television our media ministry to really try to connect with those that may not really know anything about Seventh Day Adventism.
Mhm. Well, it feels like they work really hand in hand. So you have sort
Yeah,
of this broadcast aspect, like this big funnel, and I would
yeah,
also put maybe your social media and your website a little bit sort of midway in that funnel, and then the magazine is really for simply the members then.
Yes, that's correct. And this is something new that our leadership and administration has been talking about, like just over the last year or so. Because I think when we launched Hope Channel Canada, there was a strong focus on connecting with the members, and we do want to connect with our members. Our members help to support us financially and give donations and offerings for Hope Channel Canada. But at the same time, we don't want it to become the kind of thing where we're only connecting with our members because we do want to have
Right.
growth.
Absolutely. So then what's next for you and for the magazine? It sounds like a lot of change earlier in the year, and it takes a while for change to normalize. But what do you had mentioned a strategic plan and goal. So what's next?
So I think I think what we want to do, the messenger team, and it's a small team of us. So we have
Mhm.
like our editor, Pastor Sean Ellis. We have our uh, contract freelance graphic designer, Andra Pofer. We have our contract copy editor, Melissa Hank, and myself. We're the four people who, work on this magazine every month. I think we want to increase the readership. I think we want to um, continue to get a healthy amount of advertising in the magazine and advertising income each year, and we want to be able to increase our subscribers and maybe one day even the number of pages in our magazine. We just
Mhm.
we print journalism sometimes may be lessening or decreasing in certain ways just because of technology and the world that we live in. But we have every intention of continuing to go forward with this print magazine, and God willing, it will never be discontinued.
Mhm. Oh, it sounds like you have lots of good plans on the horizon and a small but very mighty team to make it happen. But I can't wait to hear more about how things evolve and change. And I really appreciate you coming and talking to me today about your work and the work of the church in Canada. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be able to share my story. And if anyone wants to read the magazine, they can visit our website at adventistmessenger.ca. And yeah, we're always looking for people to contribute. So thank you for the opportunity to be able to be interviewed today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Associated Church Press podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media for updates, member stories, and more from the ACP community. Until next time, keep telling the stories at the intersection of faith and journalism.